And yeah, I just feel like everybody is, a lot of people are on it, right? And don't talk about it. And don't talk about it. And so I'm like, well, why are we like questioning? We should just talk about it and be totally open. Leadership leads to talent development. You really want a leader that wants to develop talent and that wants their team to be the best in class and the best team that they can have. Serena's $50 million revenge is shaking the entire tennis world, and the reason behind it has everyone talking. Welcome back to Court Eva Tennis, the place where the most explosive, jaw-dropping, and unfiltered stories in tennis unfold. What we are about to discuss is not just another sports headline or a simple celebrity disagreement. Instead, it has grown into a massive $50 million battle that could permanently change the relationship between professional athletes and the powerful media networks that have long profited from their personal struggles. For decades, the biggest clashes in tennis seem to happen on legendary courts like Wimbledon, the US Open, or under the scorching sun of the Australian Open. But this time, the real battle is happening far away from the stadium lights, inside the tense boardrooms and frantic legal departments of ABC and its parent company, Disney. The hosts of daytime television believed they were untouchable, confident that they could invite a 20-year-old rising star onto their show, pressure her with uncomfortable questions, and turn her emotional moments into entertainment for ratings. However, they made a serious mistake. They underestimated the consequences of their actions and, more importantly, they underestimated the reaction that would follow. They forgot that the greatest tennis player of all time has a memory like a steel trap, a legal team powerful enough to fund a small nation, and absolutely zero tolerance for bullying. So grab your popcorn, hit that like button, and settle in because the revenge masterpiece that Serena Williams is allegedly orchestrating against The View is the kind of story that people will talk about for generations. But to understand how things reach this point, we have to go back to the beginning because context is everything. Over the past 4 weeks, the tennis world has been electrified by the story of Eala, the 20-year-old Filipino tennis sensation who has been capturing global attention and breaking expectations with her rapid rise through the professional ranks. Eala is not just another promising young player. She represents something bigger. She symbolizes a new generation of tennis. Fearless, technically brilliant, and carrying the hopes of an entire nation and region that has long waited for a champion to emerge on the global stage. In the Philippines, fans have been celebrating her success with overwhelming pride. And the global tennis community has taken notice as well, recognizing that she is the real deal. Because of that growing attention, her appearance on the ABC daytime program, The View, initially seemed like a perfect opportunity. A chance for a young star to share her journey, connect with a wider audience, and introduce herself beyond the tennis court. It was supposed to be a celebration and a joyful moment. However, according to several sources familiar with what happened behind the scenes, the interview allegedly took a very different turn. What should have been a supportive conversation reportedly shifted into something far more uncomfortable as producers allegedly moved away from the agreed-upon script, and the hosts began asking increasingly personal and probing questions. Instead of highlighting her achievements, the conversation reportedly focused on topics that made the young athlete visibly uneasy, creating a tense situation in front of cameras and a live audience. For a 20-year-old athlete appearing on a massive national television platform in a foreign country, the pressure was already enormous. Being confronted with unexpected invasive questions only intensified the situation, turning what should have been a proud moment into an experience that many observers later described as deeply unsettling. And here is something the producers clearly failed to understand about Eala. She did not break under the pressure. Instead, she maintained a level of composure, poise, and dignity that seemed far beyond her years. Then came the moment that quickly became one of the most talked about incidents in recent sports media discussions. She simply stood up and walked out. With her head held high, she left the stage. That decision was not just an act of personal courage. It instantly ignited a storm of controversy that spread across the sports world, leaving ABC struggling to contain the backlash that followed. What happened next pushed the story into an even bigger spotlight. The reaction to Eala's experience did not simply come from a public relations team or a sports management agency. According to reports circulating in tennis circles, support came from one of the most powerful figures the sport has ever known. Serena Williams, the legendary champion who redefined dominance in women's tennis with 23 Grand Slam singles titles, was widely discussed as someone standing firmly behind the young athlete. Rather than offering only a brief message of support on social media, insiders suggested that the situation had escalated into a much larger confrontation involving legal and media pressure directed toward ABC. In these accounts, Williams was portrayed not just as a supportive voice, but as a central figure in a potential legal battle that could reportedly reach tens of millions of dollars, highlighting how seriously the tennis world was taking the incident and the broader issue of how young athletes are treated by major media platforms. The lawsuit, according to reports circulating in tennis media circles, is being described not as a simple warning, but as a powerful and direct challenge. What makes the situation even more striking is the level of influence and experience involved. Since retiring from professional tennis, Serena Williams has built an impressive business empire, including her venture capital firm, Serena Ventures, which has invested in numerous companies across different industries. Through these ventures, she has developed a strong understanding of strategy, leverage, and power in the corporate world. Because of that background, many observers believe that if she chooses to support someone in a legal or public dispute, it would likely involve serious planning and high-level legal expertise rather than simple public statements. Reports suggest that experienced attorneys who specialize in media and entertainment law could be involved, the kind of professionals known for conducting deep investigations, examining internal communications, and challenging large institutions when necessary. In situations like this, legal teams often seek accountability, changes in leadership, or financial settlements that send a strong message to prevent similar incidents from happening again. Some insiders have framed the situation in very emotional terms, suggesting that the controversy touched a personal nerve for Serena Williams. When she saw the footage of Eala critical or unfair. Over time, Serena fought those battles through her performances, her confidence, and her extraordinary success, ultimately becoming one of the most dominant athletes the sport has ever seen. People close to her suggest that these past experiences may have influenced how seriously she views situations involving younger athletes today. According to those accounts, she has expressed a strong desire to ensure that the next generation of players does not face the same type of media pressure and hostility that she once experienced. For someone with her level of influence, resources, and global recognition, taking a stand on such an issue could carry enormous weight across the sports world. And the story may not stop there. Reports within tennis discussions have also mentioned the possibility of other prominent figures becoming involved in the broader conversation about athlete treatment and media responsibility. One name frequently mentioned is Novak Djokovic, the most decorated men's tennis player in history with 24 Grand Slam singles titles and the co-founder of the Professional Tennis Players Association, PTPA. Because Djokovic has long advocated for stronger protections and representation for professional tennis players, many analysts believe he could play a role in discussions about how athletes are treated by major media organizations. If influential figures from across the sport begin speaking out together, the situation could evolve beyond a single controversy and become part of a larger conversation about respect, fairness, and accountability in modern sports media. According to reports and discussions within tennis circles, Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic have now become two of the most influential voices supporting Eala, creating what some insiders have described as a powerful shield of protection around the young player. For ABC, this would mean the situation is no longer simply about a 20-year-old athlete responding to an uncomfortable television appearance. Instead, the controversy has grown into a much larger issue involving some of the most powerful and recognizable figures in the history of the sport. With the reputations, financial influence, and global reach of players like Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic potentially entering the discussion, the matter has evolved into a broader debate about how athletes are treated by major media platforms. For Djokovic, the issue is often viewed through the lens of his own experiences with intense media scrutiny. Throughout his career, he has frequently found himself at the center of controversial headlines and public debates. One of the most widely discussed moments occurred during the 2022 Australian Open visa controversy when he was detained at the Australian border and ultimately deported. The situation created a massive global media storm, and for weeks the story dominated headlines. Many observers noted how quickly narratives formed around the situation, sometimes portraying Djokovic as a villain despite the legal and political complexities involved. Experiences like that have shaped his perspective on how athletes can be judged in the court of public opinion, often by commentators who have never experienced the pressures of elite competition. Because of these experiences, Djokovic has been a strong advocate for player rights. He is one of the founders of the professional tennis play institutions, including governing bodies, sponsors, or media outlets. As a result, discussions surrounding Alex's situation have naturally drawn attention from figures connected to the organization, particularly those who believe the case could highlight broader issues about media conduct and athlete protections. For many analysts, this controversy is beginning to look less like a single incident and more like part of a larger conversation about the relationship between professional athletes and the media industry. If legal action were to move forward, it could potentially involve serious claims such as defamation or emotional distress, as well as questions about whether interview environments were handled responsibly. Legal experts often note that cases involving media conduct can become complex and high-profile, especially when global celebrities and major networks are involved. Regardless of the final outcome, the situation has already sparked an intense debate across the sports world about respect, preparation, and fairness when young athletes step into major media platforms under the spotlight. What reportedly makes this legal action particularly alarming for ABC is not only the nature of the claims, but also the strategy behind the legal approach. According to discussions surrounding the case, the legal team connected to Serena Williams is believed to be focusing not just on the on-air hosts, but on the broader institutional structure that allegedly allowed the situation to occur. That means attention could extend to producers, editorial planners, and senior staff members involved in shaping the interview. In cases like this, legal teams sometimes request internal communications such as production notes, emails, and planning documents to determine how decisions were made before a broadcast. If such material were examined, it could potentially reveal whether the interview followed the originally agreed plan or shifted in ways that made the guest uncomfortable. The larger message behind this approach, according to commentators, is that the responsibility for controversial television moments rarely rests with only the people visible on screen. It can also involve the editorial systems and decision-making processes behind the scenes. The controversy has also reportedly created anxiety among advertisers, which is often one of the most sensitive pressure points for large television networks. Programs like The View rely heavily on advertising partnerships, and companies that purchase airtime are typically cautious about being connected to public controversies. When a show becomes linked to allegations of unfair treatment toward a young athlete, especially someone with a growing global following, brands may begin reassessing their marketing exposure and public perception risks. Even the possibility of advertisers pausing or reconsidering their campaigns can place significant financial pressure on networks to address the situation quickly and carefully. Media analysts suggest that several outcomes are commonly considered in cases involving high-profile public figures. These might include formal public statements or apologies from network representatives, revised editorial policies for how guest interviews are handled, and clearer guidelines to prevent unexpected or uncomfortable questioning during promotional appearances. Structural changes could involve better pre-interview consultations with guests, stronger agreements about discussion topics, and internal reviews of production practices. In high-visibility disputes, financial settlements are also sometimes discussed, particularly when reputational damage or emotional distress claims are involved. Beyond the legal and corporate dimensions, the broader debate centers on how athletes are represented in media spaces. Many observers argue that young competitors, especially women and athletes from underrepresented regions, can sometimes be placed in situations where their personal stories are treated primarily as entertainment content. For supporters of players like Eala, the issue is about ensuring that athletes are approached with respect and dignity rather than being placed in vulnerable positions for ratings or headlines. Eala herself has already achieved remarkable recognition at a young age, becoming one of the most promising talents in international tennis and a major source of pride for the Philippines. Her rise through the junior ranks and into professional competition has been widely celebrated as a story of inspiration and determination in the eyes of many fans. That inspirational journey should remain the focus of her public narrative. The ongoing controversy has therefore sparked a wider conversation about who controls the storytelling around athletes and how those stories are presented to audiences. Whether the dispute ultimately leads to legal action, policy changes, or simply a broader industry reflection, it has already highlighted the growing demand for fairness, transparency, and respect when rising sports figures step into the global media spotlight. In this unfolding narrative, Serena Williams is being portrayed as someone determined to transform the situation into something much bigger than a single controversy. Supporters say the story has evolved into one about accountability, solidarity, and a new generation of athletes learning that they do not always have to accept the systems and treatment that previous generations endured. As the debate continues, many commentators describe the situation as a high-stakes conflict involving powerful institutions and influential figures within the tennis world. On one side are major media organizations such as ABC and the daytime program The View, which are reportedly facing intense scrutiny and discussion over the alleged incident. On the other side are some of the most recognizable names in the sport, including Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic, whose reputations and influence have amplified the conversation around the treatment of athletes in media environments. At the center of everything is Eala, the young athlete whose decision to walk away from an uncomfortable situation has been interpreted by many fans as a moment of personal strength and self-respect. Supporters argue that the controversy reflects a wider shift in how athletes are responding to media pressure and public narratives. For decades, professional players, especially young athletes, women competitors, and athletes from underrepresented regions, have sometimes felt that their personal struggles or private lives were used as entertainment for television audiences. The current discussion suggests that many players are now more willing to challenge those dynamics and demand clearer boundaries and respect when they appear in media interviews. In that sense, the situation has grown beyond a single television segment and has become part of a broader conversation about power, dignity, and accountability within sports culture. Fans around the world are closely watching how the issue unfolds, seeing it as a potential turning point that could reshape how athletes interact with major media platforms in the future. The conversation has also energized supporters who believe the moment represents a shift in the balance of power between athletes and large media organizations. Many fans have rallied behind Eala, praising her composure and resilience at such a young age while also recognizing the influence of experienced champions who have previously faced similar challenges in the spotlight. Regardless of the final outcome, the situation has sparked intense debate across the tennis community about respect, responsibility, and how rising stars should be treated when they step into major television platforms. What began as a single controversial interview has now evolved into a widely discussed story about athlete empowerment, media accountability, and the future relationship between sports stars and the powerful institutions that tell their stories. And leadership leads to talent development. You really want a leader that wants to develop talent and that wants their team to be the best in class and the best team that they can have. This and whether I saw the other day with Alex, yeah. That's been the talk.